Hello, I'm Marc Perkel, founder of the Church of Reality, and I'm here today to talk about global warming, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, greenhouse gases, and the truths and myths about energy. So let's just start with some of the things that we know. And that first of all, global warming is happening. Global warming is a problem, but global warming is not going to lead to the extinction of the human race. We're still going to be around. It's just going to be hotter. It's going to be windier. We're going to have more storms. We're going to have more hurricanes. But we're not going to die from global warming. So that's the good news. And there are things that we can do to deal with the problems of global warming and other types of environmental issues that we're going to have to face in the future. So I want to start talking about the truths and the myths about global warming and carbon dioxide, and put a little bit of a reality perspective on the whole issue. So first of all, there's a lot of things out there that are fake cures, and one of them that's very popular is people talk about ethanol. Ethanol is not a cure to global warming. It isn't even a clean technology if you're getting your ethanol from corn, because it takes as much energy to produce the corn as what the corn produces in fuel. Ethanol is a farmer subsidy. It has nothing to do with real global warming. In fact, it produces twice the carbon that gasoline and diesel fuel produce, because you have to burn gasoline and diesel fuel to run the tractors and the equipment to process the ethanol, and the ethanol then produces the same amount of energy that the tractors used with gasoline. If they ran the tractors and the equipment on ethanol, you would have no extra ethanol or very little extra ethanol. Ethanol takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which is true when the plant grows. But then when you burn it, it puts it right back. Now, if you're making ethanol from sugar cane, like they are in Brazil, or if you're making ethanol off of waste products, plants that you would, processes that have alcohol in it that is going to waste, then ethanol makes sense. But when it comes right down to it, you're just as well off, to burn coal or oil. And speaking of coal and oil, one of the short-term things that we can do is to start the coal liquefaction technology. It isn't any cleaner than oil, but it isn't underneath of Muslims in Saudi Arabia, so we can use our coal and not make Muslims rich in the process. Plus, we don't have to haul it over here from halfway across the world. So it's going to be a little bit more efficient to use coal. The next thing I want to talk about is nuclear. Nuclear is clean as far as carbon dioxide goes, but nuclear has this little, couple little bad things along with it, so it's not quite there. One of the things is that we have yet to figure out what we're going to do with the nuclear waste. We have no way of getting rid of it, and we're going to have to store it for 1,000 generations, before the stuff kind of, slowly peters out over, tens of thousands of years, So, if sometime in the future we solve the issues with nuclear power, then nuclear power might be a viable alternative, but today it's not ready. So we have to say no to nuclear power. Another thing that I hear a lot is, people talk about hybrids. They're talking about hybrids that they can plug in. They're talking about getting 150 miles to the gallon. Well, that's a cheat, because when you plug it into electricity, you're running off of electricity. Electric vehicles are not necessarily any cleaner than gasoline-based vehicles, because it all depends on where the electricity comes from. Yes, the vehicle itself doesn't put out any pollutants, but you have the pollutants that are put out in the generation of the power, the transmission of the power. Actually, transmission doesn't put out any pollutants, but you lose a little power anytime you move it. So, to say that a car gets 150 miles to the gallon, is cheating, because when you're adding electricity, you're not counting it. So electricity is not in itself a clean method of powering a vehicle, depending on where the electricity is coming from. Now, if the electricity is coming from a hydroelectric plant, or it's coming from wind power, or even if it's generated in a more efficient way than having an individual engine, then electricity is a cleaner technology than having your own gasoline engine. Now, when it comes to hybrids give you some advantages if you're in the city and you're stopping and starting a lot. It does save you some electricity, but if you're driving straight down the highway in one of these things, and you're just, going from town to town, and it's not a lot of uphill and downhill, a hybrid really doesn't gain you much of anything. So hybrid cars, although there are some advantages, is much like ethanol. It's a little bit overhyped. So there are some technologies that, when it comes right down to it, you wonder, well, if I'm going to invest my time and energy into fixing the global warming problem, what is the most efficient way that you could do it? Well, I'm here to tell you something that you probably haven't heard before. There's this little thing that you can invest in that's going to make the biggest difference when it comes to global warming. And the biggest problem with global warming is that there's too many people on the planet. It's overpopulation. So I'm going to hold up this device right here. This is a condom. And I have it upside down. Let me see if I can get that right. Here we go. Lifestyles, right there. Ultra thin. And ultra thin is better for the environment because it uses less plastic to make it. This and other forms of birth control, this is what reduces carbon in the atmosphere, because carbon is caused by people. And the more people you have that are eating, and they're driving, and they're breathing, and they're consuming wood, and materials in order to build their houses and drive their cars. And there's just too many people on the planet where you need to reduce it. So I'm going to make a suggestion about what we can do about this thing, and how you can spend that carbon credit money that people are telling you that if you pay a little bit more for your electricity, it goes into carbon credits, which it goes to pay for cleaner technology. I'd like to see somebody start a fund that pays people anywhere in the world $500 each to get sterilized. That is the single technology investment in it, because that $500 is going to cause people not to be born. They're going to use up way more than $500 worth of environmental damage in their lifetime just because they exist and they need to live. We've just got too many people here. So if we were to spend $500, that anybody who gets sterilized gets, anywhere in the world, gets a check for $500, to get fixed. We can make that. That's the most efficient investment in technology to stop global warming of anything. In fact, I would even go as far as that if you already have a bunch of kids, let's say you have 4 kids, then you get 4 times as much to get sterilized, because if you got 4 kids, you might go on to have 8 kids or 10 kids. So that's the biggest thing, if we can, it'd be well worth it, for somebody who's got 4 kids, they can't afford to have any more kids. And, they can get a $2,000 check just to go in and, get a vasectomy or tubal ligation, something like that, to keep them from reproducing any further. So the next thing that we can do is spread the word about the Church of Reality, because the Church of Reality is a clean religion, and it doesn't do things like what the Catholic Church does and what Muslims do and other types of poor countries with primitive beliefs, that think that they have to reproduce, and make the population worse. So if we can get the word out there about reality, then less people will be Catholics, and they aren't going to go out and have 11 kids, because if you're a realist, you realize, that you don't need to have 11 kids, and that having 11 kids is irresponsible to the environment. So we need to reduce the population through birth control. And I propose starting a carbon credits fund that puts birth control in the hands of as many people as possible, pays people to get sterilized so they don't have any more kids, and does everything that we can with the money to reduce the population without having natural population control kick in. And natural population control is war, famine, and disease. So, as a realist, condoms. Otherwise, we're going to have to take a new look at things like cannibalism. Cannibalism reduces the population, and it reduces the carbon footprint. After it's the other red meat, and some people don't think it's a very good idea, and I don't think so either. But that's what it's going to come down to if we don't do something a little bit more sane. So, why don't we invest in population control, and also, green technologies, wind, solar is good. Solar's a little weak these, yet, when it comes to making solar into electricity it's not great, really efficient as it could be. But using solar to heat water, to preheat water going into your hot water heater is extremely efficient and very low tech, and you can save a lot of energy by preheating your water with solar, so you don't have to use oil, gas, and electricity to heat your water. And more insulation, and and with a little global warming, we're going to have more wind. So the positive side of global warming is that we'll have more wind in order to generate wind power, and then there's tidal power, and lots of things that we can do to get more energy. But the main thing is that there's just too many people. There's not enough food, there's not enough trees, there's not enough land to go around. The reason that housing is so high is because there's more people than there are places to live, and we're going to run out of things. So what we need to do is fix the problem, but we need to fix the problem in a way that actually works. So I suggest that we go after the most effective way of doing that, and the most effective way of doing that is population control. Again, we need to start a fund to pay people to be sterilized. And it's not a thing that has to do with, there's going to be no discrimination. If you're of reproductive age and you want $500 to get sterilized, there should be a fund out there that's going to it's going to do it for free, and it's going to pay you $500, and you can walk away with a check and feel like you're contributing to the future, because there's going to be plenty of people around that are reproducing. If we can get the population of the planet down from 6 billion people to about 2 billion people over the next 100 to 150 years, we're going to be okay. But if we keep going, we hit 12 billion, we hit 20 billion, we hit 30 billion, then we're going to talk about cannibalism. So, let's, address the problem. That's my rant. And, till next time, remember, it's the Church of Reality. Reality changed my life. It can change your life too.